eQuez. Your quest for education starts here. Welcome to eQuez Audio.
Hello, everybody. I'm Margaret Feldman, the founder of eQuez, a platform that helps students discover careers, find best fit schools, and make smart choices about higher education. This is episode 11 of Inside with eQuez, where we take an inside look at the journeys and lives of students and professionals who are studying to enter or work in a particular career. Today, we are speaking with Student Doctor Kyle Schwickerath, a fourth-year podiatric medical student at Midwestern University. After listening to this episode, if podiatric medicine sounds interesting to you, visit eQuez.com, that's EQUEZ.com, to get connected to best fit podiatric medical schools. Kyle is a native of Arizona, where he graduated from Grand Canyon University, summa cum laude, with a bachelor's degree in biology. Kyle is a non-traditional student, and prior to attending podiatric medical school, he worked in banking for nearly 10 years. During his time at Midwestern University, he has served as class vice president and was a former president of the student chapter of the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons Club. He was also a TA for the Introduction to Surgery course. He has participated in research presented in the Student Club Poster Competition at the ACFAS Scientific Conference. Kyle also qualified to be inducted into the Pi Delta National Honor Society. Now, let's hear from Student Dr. Kyle Schwickerath. So today on the show, we have Student Dr. Kyle Schwickerath. I think I said that correctly. Welcome to the show, Kyle. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Excellent. How did you first learn about the field of podiatry?
So for podiatry, I first learned about it when I was in my undergrad.
Okay.
I was attending Grand Canyon University in Arizona, and we had a kind of a partnership, I think you would want to call it, with Midwestern University, where I currently attend. And occasionally they would have like open house night where they'd bring the undergrad students in and get to come in and talk with the medical students, and they'd kind of show us around and kind of go from group to group of the different professions they had there at the school.
Okay.
And it was actually when I came across podiatry where I came across a friend that I actually went to high school with who was currently in the program.
Okay.
So I really got to talk to him about it, and he let me know kind of, his experience with it. And he was one that actually kind of persuaded me down that path.
Okay, got it. And were you considering any other types of programs besides podiatry?
Yeah, so I was doing my bachelor's in pre-med, biology pre-med, so looking at, your general MDDO schools.
Okay.
Again, didn't really know exactly what specialty I wanted to be into, so that was kind of one of the harder things about that profession as well.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the MDDO, you kind of don't know where you're going to end up, and that was a little scary, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, okay. And did you do shadowing before you decided that, yes, podiatry is the path that I want to do?
Yeah, so after meeting with my friend, him kind of giving me the rundown on it, I actually went and started shadowing with a couple doctors. Actually got a job offer from them while I was there shadowing, so I ended up started working for them. This was right after I graduated undergrad.
Okay.
So I spent that year from graduating undergrad, started working for the office and applied for podiatry school, and that kind of sent me a year in track before I started.
Okay, so you had a year in between undergrad and podiatric medical school where you were actually working in a podiatrist's office.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I was working as a medical scribe for the doctors.
Oh, nice. Okay, that was going to be my next question is what were you doing? So you were a scribe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and what was that experience like working as a scribe? Do you think that it helped you when you were applying for podiatric medical school?
Yeah, I think it did. I definitely think it helped having experience in the field, showing that you know about the podiatric field and that you're familiar with it and that you actually do have an interest in it. So I think that was a big help for me. I think it also helped starting school off because I kind of had that exposure to a lot of the medical side already from it.
Sure.
So while it didn't help much with the first years of the kind of basic science part of medical school, I think it definitely helped with the podiatry side of things.
Okay, great. And I know you said you talked to your one friend. Aside from that moment, was there any other moment where you kind of said, aha, yes, I know that I want to pursue a DPM versus an MD or a DO or, some other type of medical profession?
Yeah, so for me, one of the kind of things that finally made it click that podiatry is the route that I wanted to go is when I was in undergrad, I shadowed a lot of different professions of medicine, trying to figure out, what I was interested in, from anesthesiology to surgery to emergency to different fields. And it kind of came up, the theme kept coming up that a lot of the doctors, they kind of, just through talking with them in general, they said if they could do it again, they wouldn't. And that was kind of a common theme that kept coming up. And that was a little concerning, being a student who's trying to go into medicine, that's the passion you do, hearing that the people that are in the field, if they could do it again, they wouldn't do it. So when I came to podiatry, when I found them and met with the doctors, everyone loved the work they were doing. They were so happy with their decisions they made, with their lifestyles that they have, the kind of variety that podiatry gets to do, from your clinic practice to surgery, and you get to kind of, put your focus where you want to be, have a little bit more standardized schedule, 9-to-5 type job, if that's the route that you want to look for. So all things kind of combined were kind of the deciding factor. It's like, hey, this is kind of exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Okay. And when you did that shadowing opportunity, obviously, it takes a little bit of effort to secure those. Do you have any advice for students who are going out and searching and trying to make those shadowing opportunities happen for themselves?
Yeah, my advice would be to ask questions, kind of like I said, I shadowed a lot of different professions, and it was easy. I think once you start shadowing, I think it's easy to find out what you don't like.
Right.
You don't want to do. So ask questions, find out about the job, see if it fits what you're looking for lifestyle-wise, career-wise, financial-wise.
Yep.
I think that's one of the most important things. Don't be afraid. A lot of these doctors, they'll be happy to share their experiences with you and share their opinion on things.
Got it. And then as far as students actually, finding a doctor to shadow, what would you recommend students do if they, they're, let's say, a sophomore or a freshman and they want to get started early on shadowing? Where, should they talk to their local doctors? Should they reach out to their career office at their college? What strategies would you recommend for students to use to actually secure a shadowing experience?
I think the best is through kind of referrals and networking. Mm-hmm. So most people, as you kind of start talking around, they'll either know a podiatrist themselves, they've gone to someone, they've seen someone, or they have a family friend who has. If not, maybe even talking to their doctors. If they have a family care doctor that they see or anyone that they know, they might have a referral that they can put you with. And I think anytime you have that first-person handoff, it's just going to make that experience a little bit more kind of open, because the first-hand referral over. But at the same time, too, not everyone's going to have that opportunity, and I think that's fine. I think that a lot of doctors, again, are going to be willing, if you contact the office, talk with the office manager, tell them you're interested. I know that when I worked at the office I was at, that we would have undergrad students come in and shadow. So, yeah, I think a lot of doctors, if you don't have that first-hand connection, just reach out and let them know you're interested.
Yep. And you're never going to know unless you ask. So the worst thing they'll do is they'll say no. And what I like to say is usually something going on with them. Either they don't have the availability in their schedule or it's just not their thing. So there's no harm in just asking the question.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay. Let's talk about, aside from shadowing, to get into podiatric medical school, you have to complete the MCAT. Yep. And I think a lot of students don't realize that the MCAT is part of the admissions process. So, Kyle, what was that experience like for you preparing for the MCAT? Sort of what was your strategy for tackling that part of the admissions process?
So my MCAT experience was kind of a little interesting because, again, due to my timeline, I started working for the office right after I graduated undergrad, and I was planning on taking that year off, just as a kind of figuring out and working. And it was around August or September time frame when I decided that, this is it, I want to go for it, and I wanted to try to jump in for that round. Mm-hmm. So I had a little bit of a late notice before I actually decided to pull the trigger and move forward. So when I looked up MCATs that were in my state, I think, if I remember correctly, the MCAT was only about a week or two out from where I was at that point. So I really did not have a lot of time to go through the whole MCAT prep course and everything along those lines. So my experience was a little bit different.
Okay.
I took it, ended up doing fine. I think the most important things for the MCAT, obviously, your undergrad coursework. Make sure you do well with undergrad coursework. I think that's going to be the biggest thing to prepare you. If you're successful in your classes in undergrad, you probably won't have a problem with it. I can testify to that because I didn't really have much time to study. The short time I did have, I used Khan Academy though.
Okay.
Khan Academy I found to be a great resource when I was an undergrad. So,
Okay.
if you are short on time, I think the Khan Academy is kind of prep setup.
Okay, great. What did you say? 2 weeks? That is not a lot of time.
It's 1 or 2 weeks, and it was very stressful. It was very,
I bet.
Is this gonna work? Is it gonna play out? And then am I gonna ruin my chances for, if I don't do well this time, am I gonna ruin my chances for next round? But ended up fine.
Okay, and you only ended up taking the MCAT one time?
Yep, ended up taking the MCAT one time.
Okay, wow, that's a unique experience with the MCAT. I was not expecting that. Okay.
Definitely not the traditional route.
That's okay. You can get to the same place many different ways. So here we are. As far as the rest of admissions, so there's also typically an admissions interview that's involved. So can you tell us what was your admissions interview experience like, and how did you prepare?
Yeah, so my admissions interview, I believe I had one faculty member from just the school itself. I think they were in the admissions or somewhere along those lines. And then I had 2 or 3 faculty members that were actually within the podiatry curriculum at the school. So I think there was 4 total on my interview board. And it was a solo panel with just myself interviewing with those 4. And it was, for the most part, general questions. They wanted to know about you. They want to know about your interest in podiatry, what experiences you've had. So I think for the most part, kind of preparing for the interview, obviously make sure you know about the profession. You don't want to go into an interview not really knowing why you want to get into the field that you're looking to get into.
Right.
So make sure you do your research, shadowing, getting out there, talking with different doctors.
Yep.
Make sure you know about the school itself. Make sure you know why you want to go to that school, and be able to talk about the school itself and your interest there. And then third, just be yourself. Don't try to overthink it. Don't try to put on a show or be somebody you're not. Just be open and be who you are.
Great. I love that. And for you, Kyle, did you do any sort of interview prep ahead of time, as in like practicing with a friend or a coach?
I did not. I've worked a few jobs. I'm kind of in the non-traditional student route, so I've had plenty of jobs kind of before starting my route. So I always felt comfortable in interviews. Interviewing something that I never really stressed too much about. It's going to go how it's going to go. You don't have much control over it.
Yeah.
So that was one that I didn't go through actually any type of prepping. Not that I think it's a bad idea. I do think that would be an idea for someone to do. I just firsthand didn't do that.
Got it. But it sounds like you've had quite a bit of interview experience before that, and it's something that you're comfortable with, which is a very good skill set to have.
Yeah, exactly. So for someone that may not, for a more traditional student who's coming, right from a high school to undergrad, applying to postgraduate school, I would definitely recommend, whether it's getting out there with a panel of doctors and doing it, getting with friends or peers and doing it, anywhere you can, just getting used to, being kind of put on the spot and being asked questions and being able to talk freely.
Yes. Like I said, it's definitely a good skill to have. Okay. Now, the next part of the admissions process is obviously you have to decide, which schools you're going to apply to. And that's something that we at eQuez want to help students with, is not only helping them figure out what career they're interested in, but also how to connect to the right schools. So I'm interested, Kyle, from your experience, what factors came into play into your decision, and how did you decide where you were going to apply?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely think with podiatry, it's nice because we only have 9 schools. So, we're kind of a smaller field, so that kind of limits your options down to taking a lot of the, kind of filtering out. You've got 9 that you can look at. So for me, a few of the factors came into play was location. Some of the schools were just not really in geographical ideal locations of where I wanted to be. Okay. Whether it was from Arizona, I'm used to the sun, I'm used to the warmth. Yeah. So going somewhere that's cold and snowy wasn't high on the bucket list.
Right.
And then, some schools have a really good reputation. So reputation of the program was one that I actually, I went based off too. And you can find out just from talking with other doctors in the field. There's a lot of doctors that, whether they went to that school themselves or they rotated or externed or had residency with doctors from those schools, you get a pretty good reputation out there. So that helped me narrow down. I had 3 programs that I applied to, interviewed at 2.
Okay.
And then I got the accepted into Midwestern. I canceled my 3rd interview because being from Arizona, it was my number 1 choice.
Okay, great. So you got into the number 1 school that you wanted to get into for you.
Mm, exactly, yeah.
Great. I bet that was an exciting day when you got that
Oh,
call.
it was.
That's awesome. Okay, so as far as your career goes and podiatry goes, so within podiatry, I know there are different areas that you could potentially specialize in. And I know you haven't started residency yet, but I was curious if you had sort of started to think about if there was a particular type of podiatry you wanted to focus on or a particular area that you were looking to do, or if you're sort of open or you kind of want to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think at this point I'm still pretty open. Obviously, still pretty early in my educational process, so kind of figuring out what I like and don't like, and especially being out on externships now, you get to kind of more hone your kind of skills of what you're looking for. But I definitely think I could see myself being in a general practice somewhere, with partners with other podiatrists, like a small group of some kind.
Sure.
Just kind of working in your daily clinic, seeing your patients on a daily basis. Going to surgery when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to kind of, I don't know, it's one of those things I'd personally like to have where, I'd be the guy that's known for something, whether
Right.
that's, rear foot reconstruction or Charcot or anything along those lines. I'd like to be the guy that's kind of known for something where you get referrals from other doctors for that specialty. What that particularly would be, kind of a little early to know, but I'd like to have that available to
Sure.
me.
Build your brand around a specific area that you are an expert in.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, you've got some time to figure that all out.
Absolutely.
Now, the next question I always like to ask, because I think it's really important for the field. Do you think there are any misconceptions about the field of podiatry? And if so, what do you think they are?
I do, yeah. And, I think it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people just aren't really familiar with podiatrists.
Mm-hmm.
So at our school that we go to, Midwestern, we're integrated with the DO program. So we do all of our basic science courses and everything for the first 2 years of school with the DO students.
Mm-hmm.
We're a much smaller program than there, and a lot of times they just weren't familiar with podiatry. We would be in class with these students and they would ask us, what is it? What do you guys do?
Right.
So I think a lot of the time it's just a misunderstanding. They don't really know. And when we educate them on them, a lot of them were actually pretty impressed. Like, wow, you're going to get to do surgery, you get to do clinic, you can specialize in whether you want to be, wounds care, limb salvage, sports medicine, reconstruction. You get to kind of specialize your field. So I think a lot of it is just more we're kind of like chip and clip. Like, we do nails, we do calluses, things along those lines. That's what people kind of think of us as.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not till they really understand, that we actually are surgically trained. We go through a surgical residency that they're kind of a little bit more, wow, like start learning a little bit more about the field.
Yeah, chip and clip, that's a new phrase. I have not heard that one yet. But yeah, I mean, a lot of students don't know that you do get surgically trained, and I know that training has changed and evolved over time. So I think that might be part of the challenge too, is the history.
Absolutely, yeah, and you're right. I don't know exactly what year it was when the kind of residency requirements were changed and came into play, but you're absolutely right. A lot of the older podiatrists out there, may not have attended a surgical residency or might have only attended a 1-year surgical residency. Mm-hmm. So to some of the peers and colleagues in other fields of medicine, they might not be as knowledgeable as referring someone over because they may not know about the surgical experience, where nowadays it's kind of standardized. We're all going to go through a 3-year surgical residency.
Right. Now, so you're currently in Podiatric Medical School.
Yep.
Can you tell us what your typical, and there may not be a typical, but what does a day look like in the life of a podiatric medical student? Like from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, what does your schedule look like?
Sure. So I'm in my 4th year right now, so it's definitely a little bit different. So I'll kind of start with the first 2 years of school. The first 2 years were pretty similar to each other.
Okay.
Which is just very heavy coursework. You're going to be studying almost nonstop. Yeah. So I heard the phrase before I started school, like trying to drink water through a fire hose.
Yeah.
Somebody had explained medical school to me and it wasn't that kind of first week where you start going through all your lectures and all your different classes and you see the amount of material and it's like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to handle all this?
Right.
So first 2 years of school, you're typically looking at 1 or 2 exams a week that you need to prepare for in different classes. Classes usually start around, if it's an exam, usually around 7 a.m., 6 or 7 a.m. Classes usually around 8 a.m. or so.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to classes, you're usually there until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. The nice thing about our school, and I know a lot of other schools do this too, is we have not online education, but the lectures are recorded online. So although it may not be the preferred method for some people, for others, I liked doing my classes online. I liked just going and watching the lectures because I could slow them down or speed them up as needed to, as opposed to sitting there. Sometimes I found it a little harder to be in class.
Yeah.
So that's really a different thing. I had friends that preferred to actually be sitting in the classroom in front of the professor listening. And then there was others that preferred to be doing it from the video lectures at, comfort of their own home.
Sure. And
then starting third year for us, we started our kind of local rotations with different podiatrists in the local valley, Arizona, where I was at. Mm-hmm. At that point, you just start kind of working with the doctor's schedule. So, whatever that doctor's schedule is for the day, you're with them for that day. And then now fourth year, I'm out on externships currently. So kind of traveling around month to month, different locations around the nation. And the schedules here can vary quite a bit. Usually can be pretty long hours.
Okay.
So I've had one program where I was starting as early as 5 a.m. every day and going till 6:30 p.m. every day. And then I've had other programs where, they're a little bit more relaxed, kind of when you're done with your surgeries for the day, you're, free to go for the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of varies depending where you're doing your rotations at.
Okay, got it. And can you tell us a little bit more about your rotations and what do they involve for students who don't know what those are?
Yeah, sure. You're looking at like third-year rotations or fourth-year externships?
Let's talk about both. Let's talk about third year first, and then we can dive into the externships.
So third year is really nice because you usually get to work with an individual doctor one-on-one for the full month. So that's really nice. I really enjoyed that because you really get every doctor is kind of unique and has their own bedside manner that they use, yep, their own kind of lingo that they like to go over with the patients. So it's really nice because I think during that third year, you get to develop kind of how you're going to practice and how you're going to interact with patients. So that third year experience I thought was very unique, and you take some things that you really like from some doctors and other things that's like, oh, that wouldn't really fit the way that I would want to, talk. So that part's really nice. You get to kind of build who you are.
Yeah.
And then fourth year doing your externships, it's fun, but it can be pretty wild. So, you might be with different doctors every day. You might be with different residents every day. So typically from the rotations I've had, it's usually going to be a lot of surgery.
Okay.
So you're usually kind of shadowing in surgery or scrubbing in and assisting with the surgeries. So that's a really neat experience in itself too. But it's just trying to get a hold of everything. Every month it's changing. You're having to meet a whole new staff of attendings, whole new staff of residents.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a little wild, but it's been fun. It's been a good year so far.
Yeah, I can see it being kind of crazy with so much change all at once. So out of all 4 years, and I know you're still in your fourth, what has been so far your favorite year of podiatric medical school?
Oh man, that's a good question. I'd probably say, I think my favorite year would probably have to be third year, because that's where you really go from classroom kind of education, didactic portion of school, to now you're actually out in the real world, kind of using that knowledge you've learned and interacting with patients. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think that part was a really neat experience to go through. And it's a little scary at first, and you kind of get comfortable along the way. Yeah. But it's nice getting out of the classroom after you've been in classroom for 2 years, just pounding the books. It's nice to and actually start using that knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. And what would you say, Kyle, has been the most challenging year of school for you?
I would think probably the most challenging is first year.
Okay.
Just because it's a whole new experience, and you're trying to figure out how to study. You're trying to figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Because again, everyone has their own kind of methods that they like to go with, and there's the sheer volume that you're going to experience and get exposed to right off the bat. It's very intimidating initially, and then you kind of figure it out. And after a couple exams, I've got this. But so I definitely think first year was the most challenging. By second year, you've kind of got your rhythm down. You know how to study. You know how much time you need to commit to each exam, and kind of where you can kind of take your breaks and get your time in.
Yep. That is certainly a lot to adjust to, and it's a big change going from whether you were working or whether you were an undergrad to jump in. It's, I'm sure not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. And what advice would you have for students who are just starting podiatric medical school?
Just starting off, like they're already
Yeah.
accepted, or
Yep, they're
um,
already accepted and they're about to start, or maybe they're first years now and they're just getting started. What would be your advice?
definitely would be try out the different studying techniques.
Okay.
Some people they like to handwrite their notes down. Some people it's more just about repetition, how many times they can go through the notes. Other people it's listening and then watching.
Mm-hmm.
So trying each little technique and seeing what works for you, because everyone's going to be have their different kind of ways that learn. The
Sure.
other thing would be just kind of breathe and relax. Everyone's going through the same amount of stress that they're probably experiencing at this point in time,
Yeah.
and get through it.
Yeah.
It's scary at times, but just keep pushing, keep studying, and they'll get through it.
Yeah. That's good advice. And from your third and fourth year experiences with patients, what has been your either most rewarding or most memorable experience that you've witnessed or been a part of?
Third year, when I was on one of my rotations, I was with a patient. I can't remember exactly what the patient was in for,
Okay.
but after we were done, we had a great interaction. After we were done, he grabs the medical assistant at the office and he's like, "Hey, can you have the doctor come back in?" And he brings me back in there and he's like, "Can I get your first and last name?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I give it to him. And he goes, "Oh, great. Like, I want to come find you when you're practicing." And I'm like, "Oh, it's going to be a while. I'm still in third year right now. I've still got to go through residency." And he goes, "That's perfectly fine." He's like, "I was so impressed with you." He's like, "You're the best bedside manner of any doctor I've worked with." He's like, "I will wait 10 years for you." And he's like, "And when you do start practicing, I can tell you that you're going to have a line of patients waiting for you from out the door from here to New York." And
Wow. That's
to me,
awesome.
that was a real kind of warm feeling for me.
Yeah.
Definitely one that'll stick with me.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, that really can validate for you that you're in the right line of work and you're making a difference.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I love that. And as far as your plans moving forward, obviously the next step is residency. Have you thought at all about, where you would like to go, what you would like to do as far as that goes?
No, still kind of early in the process there, just, going through my different rotations right now. So,
Yep.
really enjoyed all my rotations so far. All of them have been great experiences. So I don't have a really top choice yet picked out, and I still have quite a few to go.
Yep.
But definitely looking to land a solid, residency that's going to have a wide variety of surgical training, good exposure, good reputation of the program, obviously,
Sure.
and then possibly consider. I'm still kind of open to in considering fellowships, whether I want to look into a fellowship after residency or not.
Right.
Kind of leaning in that direction. I think that's a route I'm probably going to want to go, but I guess time will tell once I get into residency, kind of where things work out from there. But that's kind of the plan as of right now.
Yeah, we've had a few guests on our show that are either in fellowships or going into fellowships, but as you said, it's not a requirement. So it's interesting. So what, Kyle, would make you maybe lean towards potentially doing a fellowship given that it's not a requirement?
Well, again, going back to earlier what we talked about as far as like what I'm looking to do, and I would definitely, just me who I am and I'm looking for, I'd definitely like to have that kind of niche where like that's my specialty and that's what I'm kind of known for. And I think that can definitely help with referral basis. If you kind of have a specialty that's what you're known for, not only with other podiatrists in your local area, but with other, primary medicine or other fields in your area, that you can get a lot of referrals for that if that's kind of what you're known for. So to me, I think that would be one of the things that would lean me towards the direction of a fellowship. Just finding that additional kind of specialty where I'd like to send my focus in.
Sure.
Probably something surgical, but again, time will tell. But
yeah,
that would be what leans me for there. I definitely don't really think there's a wrong way, whether you do or don't. I know plenty of successful doctors out there that didn't go to fellowship and they're still completely comfortable with with the surgery they're performing and living a good life. So I don't think it's necessary, but it's something that I guess the best way I can look at it too is I never want to look back at a point in time and say, man, I wish I would have fellowship. That's another thing for me too.
Yep. You don't want any woulda, shoulda, coulda. So that's a a good thing to think about. The next thing I want to talk about, Kyle, is the investment that you make in podiatric medical school. Mm-hmm. So it's not only a lot of time, but it's also a lot of money, and in most cases involves a heavy student debt load burden throughout the process. So I wanted to ask you, Kyle, how did you decide to take the leap and make the investment yourself in attending podiatric medical school?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And I think for me, one of the things is, because it obviously is most students can see just by going to a website and looking at the cost of tuition, it's very expensive. You add on cost of living on top of that, and you're racking up quite a bit. I think one of the most important things to do is, again, as you're talking to these doctors, whether you're shadowing or whatever your exposure might be, it might be a little uncomfortable at first, but as you get you build some kind of rapport with the doctors, ask them about investment wise. And I think that you'll see that a lot of doctors are, doing very successful for themselves and, don't quite pay attention to really what the google.com is telling you as far as what the average income is, more get firsthand exposure to what doctors are actually making. And, I had several doctors that I know that within 5 years out of residency, they were able to pay off all their student loan debt. Yep. So to me, that obviously it's a big investment getting into it, but that if the time will come where it'll pay itself back.
Right. Yeah. It's important that students not just choose medicine for the paycheck at the end, because there is so much work and time involved to get to that process. So that's an important thing that I want to make sure students are thinking about, is that they're not just getting into things for money, but they're getting into them because they enjoy it, they like it, because it will be hopefully a lifelong career, and there are other ways to make money if that's going to be your primary driver.
And a lot faster ways to make money.
Oh, yeah.
For field of medicine, you don't see money for quite a long time. So, yeah, if that's your primary end goal, I absolutely agree. I don't think, I think there's plenty of other easier, better ways to earn a good paycheck if that's what you're looking for. And I agree, if that's the only reason someone's getting into it, they'll probably learn pretty quickly that the investment time-wise, study-wise, time away from family, if they're not in it for the right reasons, that investment just won't be worth it to them. I think they'll realize that pretty.
Yeah, it'll be a hard road ahead.
Yeah.
So, big thing to think about before you jump into it. We are already at our final question. We've just been cruising through this, Kyle. So if you could go back to your very first day of podiatric medical school, what would you tell yourself, or what piece of advice would you go back and tell yourself?
I think the piece of advice is that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're going to make it. Everyone is feeling stressed out at this point. You kind of feel like you're the only person. I still remember back to that first week of school.
Yeah.
Just thinking, what did I get myself into? Like, am I going to be able to handle this? Am I going to be able to take this load? And, talking with friends that you make from class later on, everyone was in that same boat. Everyone's feeling the same way. And it's a big change from undergrad. It's a very big change from undergrad.
Yeah.
Just it's going to be okay. You're going to make it. Stick with it. Keep working hard. Put the effort in, and you'll get through it.
Yeah. And how would you say it's different from undergrad? How would you describe that difference to students?
So this is kind of hard, but during undergrad, I just really don't ever remember having to study much.
Mm-hmm. You were one of those students that just.
Yeah, for OChem, obviously, for physics, some of those classes, they took a little bit more time. But even then, it was maybe 2 hours, 2 hours a night or so. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't, you're in the books all day long, where when you start medical school, it literally is from the moment you wake up, 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, whatever time that may be, till you go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. You're either in class, or you're studying on your own, or you're sitting at your computer trying to study but getting distracted by other things.
Yeah.
But it's really the commitment that it's more than a full-time job. You'll be spending, easily more hours than somebody would be spending in a 40-hour work week just studying. Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest change for me, from kind of the undergrad to the med school.
Got it. And I know you said before another piece of advice was to find what study method works for you or what study technique works for you. So what did you find worked best in your situation?
So for me personally, the technique that worked best for me was repetition.
Okay.
So I found that if I could get through, if we had an exam that was over 10 lectures, if I could get through those 10 lectures 4 times each, that's where I found my comfort zone in that I really knew the information. Where other people, they maybe only go through each lecture one time, but they're spending 4 or 5 hours in that lecture taking notes and really kind of digging into it.
Right.
For me, I would try to go through the first one, just looking at it, just kind of grazing over it, but not really digging too deep into it. Second time, you're getting a little bit more familiar with some of the terms you're seeing, you're familiar with some of the definitions.
Right.
And then typically by your third time, you're pretty comfortable, you're breezing through. And then my fourth time, it was kind of almost to the point where, I felt comfortable that I could almost be reciting what was on the slides before I even came to them. So that was the big thing for me, was repetition. Just get through it as many times as you can. Don't really focus on how much time it's taking to get through it, but just try to get through it as many times.
Got it. That makes sense. So anything else, Kyle, that you want students to know? We have a lot of prospective students that listen. Anything else that you'd want to tell them, that you want them to know, or that you want us to chat about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for prospective students looking to go to medical school, I'd definitely say challenge yourself during undergrad.
Okay.
Don't try to get around some of the harder classes. I know that I went to undergrad with people where, they would either try to schedule the tough classes during summertime when they were shorter and supposedly easier. They would try to take them at a community college and then transfer the credits over. Mm-hmm. And I would just say, if you want to be prepared for medical school, challenge yourself. I remember I had a professor, an advisor when I was undergrad that told me, the first true step of, if you can make it through med school is when you take your OChem and your physics courses. Okay. So he was like, take both of those together at the same time. Don't try to split them up. Don't try to separate them, but take them. And if you can get through both of those at the same time, that's kind of that first step to see where you're comfortable at. So I completely agree with that. I think that's a great piece of advice. Challenge yourself, make sure you're prepared, because if you kind of go through everything easy during undergrad and then you get in med school, you'll definitely see the change.
Yeah. No, that's good to know, is get it done early and, put yourself in situations where you're out of your comfort zone and you're stretching, because then you're just going to be that much more prepared when it does get more challenging in med
Absolutely.
school. So.
Yeah. And you'll know that you can make it through because you've kind of been through it before.
Yeah, that's a new piece of advice that I like that one. Anything else that you think students should know or that you would want to chat about on this podcast?
Definitely look into podiatry. I mean, It's a great field. I absolutely love it. I definitely think it's, I couldn't be more happier than where I'm at right now.
Yep.
The decision I made to get into this field, coming from a completely different line of work previously altogether, couldn't be happier. And whether that's podiatry for you or whatever field that may be for you,
sure.
Definitely pursue it. But I think podiatry is one of those hidden gems of medicine that a lot of people just aren't too familiar with and don't really know about. The more you learn about it, the more interest I think you'll have in it.
Yeah, it's worth a look. That's what, we want to do with eQuez. We want students to learn about their different options. Not that anyone is better than any other, but it is good to sort of know what's out there and to find what uniquely fits best for you.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, Kyle, thanks so much for coming. I appreciate your time and your advice to students as they embark upon their adventures, whether it's podiatric medical school or anything else. I think that you had some good insights to share.
Yeah, happy to help.
Thank you for listening to eQuez Audio. To learn more about podiatry and to explore schools, head over to eQuez.com. That's eQuez.com to get personally matched to best fit programs. If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe, and we would love for you to rate and review us. Keep in mind that our discussion today mentions views and opinions that are personal in nature and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any university, agency, organization, employer, or company, and should be used at your own discretion. We wish you the best in your quest for education.